Ladies and gentlemen, we are live with the Jesse Lewis Show, and this is for promoting the PHS Summit, the Performing Hypnotist Summit. And I'm very lucky because today I am here with one of the presenters, and he's also doing a workshop as well. John, I'm not going to say your last name because I'm going to mess it up. I believe, here's the thing, I do that all the time. My real last name is Storschuk, but you wouldn't believe how many people actually don't know how to pronounce that. So John, please introduce yourself and what we're going to do here today.
My name is John Cerbone. I am a professional hypnotist, and I have been practicing forms of self-hypnosis since 3 years old. So I've been at this my entire life. They claim if you do something for more than 7 years, your brain wires itself to be whatever that is. I've got the brain of a hypnotist. So I'm a stage hypnotist. Some people might say hypnotherapist also. In New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, I have to be called a clinical hypnotist due to some regulations and laws and what rules, whatever the heck it is. And I am the creator, inventor, and developer of 127 speed inductions with variations and derivatives, probably like version A, B, and C, probably close to 145 or 150 of those. I've been doing shows for over 3 decades from coast to coast, Canada and Europe, from Las Vegas to Broadway to Atlantic City. I eat and I breathe and sleep hypnosis pretty much. I think sleep hypnosis is pretty funny personally. And I just love what I'm doing. So come learn from me. Come get what you can. Come ask me every question. There's no such thing as a stupid question except the one you don't ask. So let's jump in and talk about some workshops and what we do here.
Let's do that. So we've got 2 workshops that we're looking at. Let's talk about, first off, one that I think most hypnotists can use, and that's make your show a dynamo. A lot of us read a book and that's our training, or we go to a workshop and that's our training, but we never actually look at the stagecraft of it. We just do the show we were taught and we never look at it. So what's make your show a dynamo going to be about?
Let me give you a little bit of information more about myself so it leads into this.
Absolutely.
I've seen a lot of draggy hypnosis shows over the years. You know, mid-show drag, the middle third is just hypnosis for the audience. Put them out, you know, like what's going on? I'm falling asleep. I have been through a lot of crazy situations to make my show revolutionary in a lot of ways. People have called it. I've been called a force of nature by a school in Pennsylvania because I have stage experience as an actor, for example. In college, I was working for the communications and speech department. And in my family, like a lot of families, if somebody called you after 10:30 at night, somebody was dead. And I remember coming out of the restroom and my mother said, your professor is on the phone. It's like 10:40 at night. And I got on the phone with him and I was working for him. And he said to me, very wonderful man, still alive, 94 years old, actually. And John, I got a question for you. Listen, I looked at your schedule and he had this West Virginia accent, really a great guy. And I know you're free. So you got an A in the classes I'm teaching during these periods of time last year, right? Yeah, you still got the notes? Yeah. Well, guess what? You're teaching those classes for the next 4.5 months. I got a role on Broadway in St. Joan. And as an actor, I'm playing a general. And you're going to run these classes for me. I'm like, what? Yeah, you're going to teach. So as an undergraduate, I was teaching speech and communications. I was acting. I had several plays I was in, including The Crucible by Arthur Miller. I had the lead role. My professor came one night, and the next night he brought a bunch of people with him. I was like, right, he brought an audience. And I won a scholarship to the Actors Studio in Manhattan, which I couldn't accept because it was 4 years of working with Lee Strasberg and famous people. Robert De Niro went there, Marilyn Monroe, Al Pacino, Harvey Keitel, all these famous people. But because I had to go get a job, that went out the window. But I have a lot of stage experience from working in those days and knowing what you got to do to bring up an audience. My first concert as a kid was, believe it or not, Black Sabbath. I didn't even know who they were at the time. This kid across the street, his brother was a radio DJ at a college station. He got some free tickets. But guess what? We're 14. We're going to go see Black Sabbath. I'm like, all right, sounds good to me. And I noticed the production values of all these rock bands I've seen, you know, whether it was the Rolling Stones, where back in high school, the stage opened like a flower and I was making faces at Mick Jagger and he was making faces back at me. And after 7 or 8 faces back and forth, each of us, he kind of went like that. The whole section where I was went berserk. I was a local hero, you know, or watching Van Halen with David Lee Roth or whoever else, you know, rip up the stage. And I see a lot of stage hypnotists just going through the motions. I've done part A. Now I'm going to do part B. Now I'm going to like wake up and rip it up. What if this is your last moments on earth? Do you want to be known for a show that was like, okay, I just kind of went through the motions? No, you got to get out there. And you see what I'm doing right now. My energy level has gone on this, right? This is every show I do. This is every demonstration I do. Am I this jazzed up in a private session? Maybe, but I'm holding it down, and I got to go through the motions of doing 2 hours with somebody. But the bottom line is that I am determined to make this better. And like, some of the other people involved in this conference, including my friend Jim that has since passed on, broke my heart. I'd spoken to him the day before he passed on. His whole thing was we need to get along better together and share and motivate each other to raise the bar on what we're doing here. He nicknamed me. Somebody asked me for credentials a while back. And he said, "Are you kidding? You're John freaking Cerbone. If you get freaking in the middle of your name, you've reached a certain pinnacle." So it's on my refrigerator. I took a picture. I had sent it to him. We were laughing about it. And, it's going to be with me forever, it looks like. And it's the same thing with having trained with the late, great Orman McGill years ago. He said, develop a love affair with your audience. Sometimes I'm in a love affair with the audience, and sometimes I'm like the warrior fighting to get them to laugh or raise their energies or get standing ovations or get up on your feet. Everybody dance at once. Get the audience involved. My whole thing with the shows, I want the people on my stage exhausted. I want to be exhausted so I sleep well. The best sleep you'll ever have is after your adrenaline calms down. You go and you pass out. That pass out sleep is the best. You sleep like a rock. I don't want the audience to go home exhausted from clapping and screaming. And this is what I'm teaching in this class. I mean, what is your walk-on sounding like? What's your mental motivation before you walk onto stage? We all have our little rituals, from what I understand, from every stage hypnotist I've ever spoken to of any magnitude. The lesser magnitude ones need to pay attention and listen up. And, we're all able to learn from each other. So there's no reason why we can't get this thing going like a rock concert. People who are showing up to these shows in audiences, in arenas, in theaters, in a living room. I've done a lot of living room shows the last couple of weeks for some reason.
Actually, that market is taking off everywhere. It is amazing how many living room and backyard shows there are in the summer where I'm at. And some of them are being run by like arts councils and stuff, and it's crazy. Sorry for interrupting you, John. I do apologize.
Okay. I'll get back to my flow here.
Yes, I'm sorry.
No problem. I'm laughing. But the point is that if you're not going up there working like this is the last show you're ever going to do in your life or the last thing you're ever going to do in the world, then what are you doing up there? What are you doing? I've been to hypnosis conventions where it's like, it's like crickets and like they do in the cartoons and in the movies when the jokes don't land, or it's why crickets are this, I don't know. Probably a frog maybe, but or a bird. But I've done shows in front of 8,000 people. I've done shows in front of 10,000 plus people. It was over 10,000 people in a field at a county fair here in New York City. 8,000 for the Brooklyn Cyclones in a baseball stadium on the field itself, because the sun's baking that field. I don't know how those guys do that. It's going to be 100, 125 degrees down there. It's like being inside an oven. You walk out there immediately, you're nice and cool from the green room. You walk out, sweat, just soaked instantly through your socks, your shoes, your underwear, your shirt, everything, your pants. The whole idea is to get out there and rip this up like you're on fire, and this is the last thing you're ever going to do in your life. And if you're not doing it that way, then come train with me. Come learn this stuff. Someday the mothership's going to come back and take me back to my home planet. I'm not going to say anything nastier than that, but if they take me back to the home planet, I want to leave a legacy here. I want people to go out and say, I ripped this up like it was the last thing on earth I ever did. I've seen hypnotists doing bits that don't land and they're laughing at their own jokes, or they'll do 5, 6, 7 sketches in a row that don't land. And I've seen this even in Las Vegas where they don't land. And they tell the DJ, go back and play those last 7 tunes. I'm going to do it a second time. And I'm like, what? It didn't land the first time and it got worse the second 7 times you did those routines. It's just like, what? I learned how to play guitar a little bit when I was younger because I was playing drums under the Christmas tree in an old film without audio my father had, which I've since converted to video. And then from there on to YouTube, but it's in private mode. Why the whole world wants to see my family movies, I don't know. But, my parents tried to get me away from the drums to play guitar. It was a little easier on their head, And back in high school, it was like, you're taking a music class. Well, there's no guitar in the orchestra, so what are you playing? I'll play drums, thank you, and haven't stopped tapping on stuff since. But if you're not out there working like you're a rock star and you're bringing this home and you're driving this forward. 3 years old was a big year. My intuition opened up at 3 years old. My self-hypnosis technique. My dad used to scream too much when he came home from his job emotionally as a police officer. And I went up in my bedroom, and a lot of people in this country live on one floor. I lived on a 2-story house and a basement, I told somebody, go upstairs and relax. They're like, on the roof, But wherever you live, I went up to the second floor of the house to my bedroom, and I put myself into this altered state. Didn't know what it was, just did it. And my parents thought that was strange at 3 years old. And by 5, they said, that seems to work. Teach us how to do that. So at 5 years old, I was teaching my parents how to hypnotize themselves. So I'm walking around my whole life doing this stuff. So when it came to doing the shows years ago, I was giving a lecture on hypnosis in front of about 80 people, maybe 75, maybe 90. I don't remember exactly. I remember I had this half a brick cell phone at the time, but with the little antenna, the first cell phone I ever had. And in my pocket, it looked like I was, carrying a gun or something. And put the phone down. I was giving this speech. And at the end, these people came over, 2 men and a woman. We just did our fundraiser last week to help kids with cancer. Can you do one of those funny hypnosis shows? I took training from people like Orman McGill, the late Jerry Valley, Don Martin at the NGH. And I haven't looked back because it's become like the fun part of hypnosis, with the clinical stuff. And I love the people who come and I help them. But it's a lot of problems and issues and challenges. I don't like the word problem very much. But it's like, they're stuck on certain things. They're trapped in a moment. With a show, you walk out a hero. Take that energy, cycle it into yourself, pump it back into the audience, have them cycle it back into you. It becomes this symbiotic energy flow where you walk out a hero. Somewhere in the body of the show, you get to laugh. Somewhere you get paid, hopefully at the beginning of the show, sometimes at the end, it depends. Sometimes they send you a check. Sometimes it's before you do the show. Sometimes it's afterwards. Always makes me laugh if I get the check in advance. I'm like, maybe I won't show up. No, but I love this stuff too much. I'd never, ever do that. So consequently, just go out there and rip it up and then make the show your own. There's so much of what I want to put into these workshops about how to make this show your own. I see, unfortunately, way too many people doing the same cookie cutter show.
Yes.
I do this and I do that, and then this comes next. And you see 20 hypnotists, and it's the same thing over and over again. I was originally trained with about 75, and later on, maybe an additional 30 or 40 bits to do.
Yep.
And I have now close to 500 routines I've written of my own in the computer. And the idea is, and whatever pops into my head as I'm working, bang it out, make it happen, make it funny. I've had people where I've put things on YouTube. Oh, I did this bit that you put up on YouTube. That's why I don't put a lot of stuff on YouTube anymore. I don't mind if they borrow it. Just ask me first. I'll pretty much give you whatever you want when it comes to that stuff. But then they don't do it right because it's not funny to them. And then they come back and they say, it didn't work. What did I do wrong? I don't see any video. You didn't ask and say, please. Please is big with me. And thank you is a biggie. It's the way I was raised. But the idea is to go out there and make it work. And if something funny happens in your show, and hopefully you're videoing the whole show, go back and watch your own video and see where you can improve, or take that thing that popped into your head. And it's like, what did I do? Like that other bit? I don't remember what it was. I was in a creative flow. Yeah. And for example, I did a comedy show out in Wisconsin, 2 comedy shows at a club out there. And the guy has a radio show. And I did 2 broadcasts from here and then in New York. And I did 2 out there. And the last broadcast, he said to me, what are you going to do tonight? I said, I have no idea. What do you mean you have no idea? I said, because when I'm working, I'm in an altered state of consciousness. I don't know what I'm doing. Yep. It just happens at this point. And I move around a lot. I remember Mick Jagger, seeing him numerous times at Madison Square Garden and moving around and moving around and moving around. I put a Fitbit on one time, to see how much walking I do because my butt was killing me. My legs were sore, I had all this muscle stuff. 17 and a half miles once at a high school show. Walk back and forth across that stage. 30-something chairs, no assistant, because they just, why don't you just get like 1,000 people up there and I'll just juggle keeping safety for all of those people. The most I've ever had at once was 48 with no assistant. Georgetown University. And I only had 38 chairs. So 10 of them are on the floor. I said, you have to leave. We're not leaving. I call it my Woodstock show. It was like the hippies laying on the dirt, They wouldn't get up. And when somebody had a pee or whatever it was, I was like, all right, we'll just get you in the chair and bye-bye to them, whatever it was. But if you're not ripping this up from the core of your being, with the heart and soul of who you are, let's talk about your walk-on. Who's done your walk-on? Is it pre-recorded? You weren't sure how to pronounce my last name, you know? When I was born, and by the way, you're an excellent company. When I was born, the baby bracelet I had on my wrist in the baby room with the glass and all the other babies misspelled my last name. My mother looked into the baby room. She said, "That's my kid. I could have a happy, wealthy set of parents somewhere." You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
but they've been misspelling my name my entire life, you know. And people have said to me, "Oh, you've ripped off the Sorbonne University in France. It's not spelled the same way. It goes back to the year 400 something at least. There's 2 Catholic saints with my last name from ancient history, whatever it is. So it's my real last name. Who would make up such a last name anyway? You know, I mean, I could come up with something happier, like, you know, Johnny Peppy, Johnny Happy, you know, Funny Man, something, you know."
Yep.
This Trance-Master came up because the late, great Orman McGill said to me, "You know what? I've been thinking, you need a stage name." And I went, "What?" He said, "I was Dr. Zom, short for zombie, back in the 50s
Yep.
and 60s. And if John Cerbone shows up, they're like, 'Who's that?' But if, you know, somebody shows up with a name, you get a line." So I went to bed that night because he was very clever and one of the sweetest people you ever met in your whole life. I mean, just genuinely a pleasure to have known this guy. I guess I saw It's a Wonderful Life. Angels are getting their wings, right? But anyway, I went to bed that night, and after a show for a religious group, I do a lot of shows for yeshivas and synagogues and stuff in New York. These 2 old ladies came up to me at the end of a dream and said, "You're such a trance master." And I woke up. I went, "That might be something." I wrote it down on the phone. I called him the next day, and he said to me, "That's your stage name? As the Dean of American Hypnotism, I'm certifying that as your stage name." And then I put it up on the internet, and a bunch of people tried to borrow it, about 7 of them, so I had to trademark it. So I'm the only, well, I see Trance-Master, my lawyer will be calling you. But it's not
So
me.
it's funny you say that you trademarked it, John, because when I went to get your bio and stuff, I typed in, "Give me information on Chat GPT," and it brought up John Cerbone, the Trance-Master, TM. So that's bloody amazing that you've trademarked it to that point. I do have one question.
Sure.
I do have one question. So in the Encyclopedia of Stage Hypnotism, McGill's book, I talked to Tom Silver about this as well. You're talking about amping yourself up before the show and getting that energy flow back and forth. Now, this might sound airy-fairy, but in Orman's book, he talks about imagining a golden hue around you and then imagining that hue go out and back and forth into the audience and connecting that way. As part of your pre-show ritual, is this something you do, or is it something similar to that?
Yeah, and I did this stuff long before I saw that book and read that. So, you know, and Orman said to me, I met Orman at the NGH convention years ago. Tom Silver was there. He had brought Orman with him. And Orman spoke to me for like 3 minutes. He said, "You know something? You're a future me. The whole world, in this profession especially, but the whole world is going to know you one day for the amazing things you're going to do." And I was like the old Fred Sanford, you know, grabbing my chest. "This is the big one, Elizabeth," you know. And if you're younger and you don't know what that means, go look up Sanford and Son. It's better to watch him do it on YouTube or somewhere. But I, for example, and this leads into the other workshop that I'm doing, is that I was up at the convention and most of the people up there who were older than me were really nice. But like any group of people, you get a couple of craggy individuals. That's how that kind of works. Yeah. And there was one up there who he brought me into a workshop he was hosting, and he was doing some quicker inductions. And when I was first trained officially, because I've been doing this, it was like walking, talking, potty training, hypnosis pretty much for me. I asked this guy after the class, because I was in the hallway afterwards with him and Orman, and he said to me, I said, "What about that fast stuff you did? Where do you learn that from?" "Oh, that's not for youngsters like you." And I was treated like it was almost like called me like, you know, from an old movie, "You whippersnapper, like who do you think you are?" and blah blah blah. And I thought to myself, and you know, I don't know about you, but a lot of people in the world do this. You store it in the back of your mind. You're like, all right, all right. So I was driving back to New York City from Massachusetts, probably New Hampshire at the time, actually, I think, because they were further north. And I was approaching, of all places, as I was daydreaming in road hypnosis, highway hypnosis, driving the car, the exit from Mystic, Connecticut, of all places. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. And as I approached Mystic, Connecticut, I said, if I try this and I add this and I do this and I try that at the end, they're going to go, not even try because I don't like that word either, but I'm going to do this at the end and boom, they go right out. So 2 days later, I'm home and I'm in the house. I'm doing sessions in my home. And on the couch, I have this woman in the chair I'm doing hypnosis with her. I said, just for a second, would you sit here? And she was a regular client. It wasn't like some stranger that I just worked with once. I said, would you sit on the chair on the couch? I'm going to try something. And I did the butterfly induction in front of her face and I went to sleep. And she just dropped like a rock. She keeled over with this big happy grin on her face, like ear to ear. And I said, that's something. Got to keep that going. And you know, if you're doing publicity or marketing or whatever you want to call it, at that point, I had written my first book, but I had various iterations of it. Mm-hmm. So I might have been like on version 3 or 4. I think I locked it out at version 7 because people who bought version 3, 4, and 5 were mad that I released a version 6 and 7, right? And that didn't occur to me it would bother anybody, but it did apparently. So I had written like 80 scripts that I had published for clinical hypnosis and one of this other thing. And I went, oh, I can't just have one. Got to have multiple. It has to have an S on the end. Induction is plural, you know? So it took me literally about 9 months, like having a baby, to come up with a second one. And now it's just spitting out of me at this point. It's just like boom, 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 one after another. And it's become like every time I teach a workshop on speed inductions, there's probably at least 1, 2, 3, sometimes 5 or 7 new inductions that come out of me based on hand gestures, movements, other things I'm doing, and things that pop into my mind, much like I said it before about doing a show where like funny stuff happens, or like the idea of empowering the people at the end of your show. A lot of hypnotists don't do that. If you're doing clinical work, why not empower them? Or post-hypnotic suggestions that they're going to react to afterwards and different things. So with the speed inductions, I have been clocked as fast on video in some cases at 0.2 of a second, 1/5 of a second, walk up to a stranger, put them right out. Now, I know it sometimes has to do with environment and whatever it is, but even when we did the Speed Trance DVDs, which later became downloads, which I have, and there was version 1, now there's 2.0, whatever it is, I don't let anything get in my way. If I was a starship captain, it might be the USS Relentless. You just keep at it. You know what I mean? Like, just keep at it. And in the first video we shot we shot some of the videos in Kansas and eventually Las Vegas. I had people who were drunk in bars I was doing this to. I mean, one guy had like 5 or 6 or 7 like shots of whiskey, like, or bourbon or whatever it was, like within 10 minutes. This guy was in a rush to get drunk. And I just kept at him until he went out. So it's a matter of like, you're only failing when you stop. And I'd have stopped. I didn't want the show to end. If I could do a show for 15 hours, I would. But sooner or later, people in the bathroom and arrest, you know. So you do what you got to do. You had a question.
I do. We're actually coming up on the close. I've got another interview in like 7 minutes. So, John, I want to promote what you're doing. You've got the we're at the Performing Hypnosis Summit, everybody, and John is doing I wrote them down, but Make Your Show a Dynamo, and also the supersonic trance.
I'm calling it. Yeah.
There we go. So, final question, John, is if you could go back to when you were first booking your very first hypnosis show, what would you teach yourself then about the actual marketing of the show? Not the hypnosis show itself, but the marketing of the show, because that's just as important as what we do on stage.
Be outrageous, be bigger than anything. That's whether you're doing the show or you're marketing the show. Let the world know the juice that you have up on stage or in front of an audience if you're doing a floor show, which a lot of us are doing at least 50% floor shows these days. Go out and let them know that this is your passion, your dream. You're excited by it. Bring what's in your heart out into the world as energy, like you talked about Orman, because that's kind of what I do to a degree. There's other things I do too, which will be in the classes I'm teaching. But then let it come back to you and then filter it and bring it back out again. And the same thing with the marketing. Let them know who you are. That, you know, one of the people from the NGH that passed away a few years ago wrote a book, Elsa Eldridge, Be the Obvious Expert. You're the person up there. I've had kids at some of the high school shows. Oh, I don't think this person was hypnotized. Yeah, their eyes were fluttering. Their eyes rolled in. And finally, I just look at them. I go, who's the world-class expert here? Me or you, Junior? You know, I mean, let's break it down. When you get those little Poindextery kids, you know, I think this, you know, please, you know, I'm old enough to be your grandfather at this point. I don't want to admit that to myself, but I'm thinking myself as 20 or I can't keep going. You've been a delight. I hope I didn't chew your ear off too much, but
no, not at all. I wish. So what happened? The reason I'm keeping it to 30 minutes specifically is my scheduling software actually screwed up. So I do apologize. So I have one with Jason O'Callahan is coming on shortly. John, I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It makes me very happy that you did so. You are a legend in your industry, in our industry, because it's what we do. And we have more of a shared mindset than you would ever think. I really wish our conversation was longer.
Let's on a Jim. I haven't some pizza in Las Vegas. What do you say?
I will not eat pineapple on a pizza.
Me either.
So
No.
Unless it's pepperoni.
I'm from New York. Are you kidding me? Pineapple? What have I got, a surfboard? What is this? Come on. I picture some big kahuna eating a pizza, on a surfboard, moving around. So
I've always heard that New York pizza is the best in the world. Is it actually?
If you know where to go, you come to, where are you from? Where do you live?
I'm from Saskatchewan, Canada. So I'm in the middle of bloody nowhere, Canada. So yeah.
I know the best places because I grew up around here. So, I could tell you, like, I was in Manhattan last week. The week before, I stopped on the way back from someplace, different places. I know the best places to go generally. Do I know every best place? Have I been to every single place? No. But I also know I've had some horrible pizza from people who don't know what they're doing, and that I will not put up with. There's only like one or two chain pizzerias that I'll eat at, and one of them is Blaze. I happen to really like Blaze Pizza. There's one out in Las Vegas. There's 3 out in Las Vegas. So let's hang out. Let's do something.
We can definitely do that. Are you coming to Vegas? Are you actually going to be there? You are, because you're doing an
I
actual
am there
workshop.
for that. And later on the ICBCH, I'm the keynote speaker. I kind of have to show up for that.
Well, that's fair. Everybody, Performing Hypnosis Summit. John, thank you once more. We're going to talk. I know we are. And we'll see you in Vegas. I'm going to end the stream now. Bye, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it.